Howdy, this is Blake Purcell coming to you from in front of the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, Russia, where it snowed. Actually, this is our favorite picture of the Hermitage, and we've mounted it on our wall here in Fort Worth. I'm going to wear my Christmas glasses that my wife gave me this Christmas to explain to you about one of the most exciting, life-changing testimonies of life change that we have in our ministry. Pastor Ruslan Moroz graduated in 2016 from our seminary, but his life is an example or a picture, a portrait of what Russia has been like over the past 30 years while we've been ministering there. He married his wife Olga in 1989 after getting out of the Soviet Army. Like all the men have to serve in the Soviet Army and now in the Russian Army. And when he got out, they got married, they had 2 kids, and the Soviet Union fell apart between 90 and 91 formally. And that meant that all the businesses and all the enterprises of the Russian world that made money were up for grabs. It wasn't sure. When communism owned everything, all of a sudden nobody owned anything when communism fell. So he ended up in a criminal group in Vladivostok and joined them, and he said it was so dangerous they were importing cars from Japan right across the Japanese Sea, or the Sea of Japan from Vladivostok in the Pacific Ocean. And every other day they were burying a friend in his mafia group, he said. He ended up neglecting his family, neglecting his wife, and by about the year 2000, he'd been in it for 10 years, 11 years, and he realized, well, he'd become a drug addict, a cocaine addict. He was an alcoholic. He was at the end of his rope. He was very, very wealthy, and decided, right in the middle of realizing that he was going to die if he kept living the way he was living, he decided, he was just wandering around the city thinking about life and what he was going to do, and he ran into an old high school friend who immediately sensed that Ruslan was in a very dangerous way, and he invited him to he shared with him a little bit about the gospel of Jesus Christ, and then invited him to church the next day. And Ruslan was kind of dumbfounded that his high school friend was now, quote, religious. But he went to his Bible study. He had a morning Bible study every day of the week, and he went there and heard the gospel every day, and finally, at the end of that, said, "You've been preaching to me every day, and I'm mad at you." And he got mad at his friend and tried to leave. And then it was about a 1-year period of time where he was really battling whether or not he would commit himself to the church and change. In the middle of that, this is the first thing that Ruslan is going to share. In the middle of all that, he had to go to his mafia boss and ask permission to leave. Now, in the mafia, you don't leave vertically. You only leave horizontally.
Let me ask, did you already tell us about getting out of the group, of the группировки?
Да, к нашему боссу криминальному, я пришел к нему домой, но я просто сказал, что я хочу уйти, и я попросил, чтобы меня отпустили.
He went to his mafia boss and said, I need to leave. I want to leave. And so after he got out, the boss said, you have to give me back your car. And then he went back to church and never left church again. And to this day, в каком году это было?
Это был 2002 год.
So this is 2002, not for me, not that long ago. So then 2002, when he was already in his 40s, already in his 30s, he joined the church.
And so he doesn't know of anybody else that was let out of the mafia just by asking. But Christ had come into his life, and he went and humbly asked to be let out, and the man in peace didn't pull out a gun and shoot him. He just let him out. And then he was free to join the church. He joined the church there in Vladivostok. It was started by the Korean Presbyterians. A few years later, they went to the Korean Presbyterian Seminary, and then in 2011, I met him out there. I go and visit all the churches that I can, all the pastors that we're training, in their families and in their homes and in their churches. So I was out in Vladivostok visiting another pastor, met him, and then he started studying in our seminary in 2012, graduated in 2016, and he, during that time, started a church in Romanovka, not far from Vladivostok, and the church had about 20 people in it, 20 adults, still has about 20 adults in it. All of them have been led to Christ by Olga and Ruslan. So it's really one of our most fruitful churches. It's a very broken down part of the world. So not only did God get a hold of the life of a mafia member, a criminal who had done very bad things and was making a ton of money, but then he got them to go to a very, very difficult part of Russia where people are open to the gospel, but they are in great need. What he's also going to share with you about is when they got there, they didn't realize to some degree how bad the health situation really was, and they ended up, the wife ended up contracting tuberculosis and was life-flighted to Korea.
Тогда, да, у нас были такие испытания в семье, потому что здесь очень много людей, больных туберкулезом.
So they got there, and the health was so bad that tuberculosis was rampant in the population. And some people, they have mental illness in Russia. I would call this mental illness. You can translate, Genya. But больные люди и в голове, и в теле, понимаешь? And these people would spit on the railings and things in different homes, people that had tuberculosis, to give tuberculosis on purpose to other people. And so first his wife got tuberculosis, and she had to be life-flighted to Seoul to have life-saving operation in Seoul, Korea. And then his son had it and had life-saving operation in Vladivostok. And now he is tuberculosis positive and has to take drugs for it, but it's not an active disease in him right now. So they went to a place that was very, very dangerous health-wise, and stayed even though each member of the family has been severely affected. So to me, that's quite amazing and quite a testimony of the power of Christ in your life.
But here's the interesting thing. They didn't leave the field. You see, they feel that when God called them to plant the church, he called them to plant the church. And they have to face the same risks that everybody else who lives there faces. So you'll hear some details on that. The next exciting thing is that one of our churches in Siberia, it's not actually Siberia, almost to Siberia, in Kazan, had a young man who himself was a prisoner, had been in jail, had been in prison. He got out and was ministered in prison by one of our church, a pastor in our church in Kazan. And then he got out and moved to Vladivostok for further training for ministry purposes. So now he moved to Vladivostok and was a minister in training under Ruslan, and met Ruslan's daughter, whose husband was an unbeliever and left her with 2 kids. And they just got married, and he's in training. Now, what's exciting about this is he's in training to take over the Romanovka church, and that will free up and is freeing up Ruslan and Olga to start a church in a much bigger city called Nakhodka, where the Russian Pacific Fleet is, the naval fleet is. So they're planning on starting that church. They already have an interest group going in Nakhodka, and Andrei is going to keep the church going there in Romanovka with his wife and 2 children, and hopefully, I guess they're planning on having more children. But so that exemplifies our vision for church planting in Russia and the Russian-speaking world, and that is we plant churches that plant churches that plant churches. You get the idea. And Ruslan is an excellent example of that. The one last thing I wanted to say is that the church building that he is using, you all are Hope Russia supporters actually paid for that building. It was built over the past 4 years. It's almost done now. It's a beautiful building, and the only functioning church building in the small town of Romanovka. So thank you for your great support of Roman and Olga. And without further ado, God bless.